The twin suns were setting behind the silver hills when Aaron walked across the quiet field. The air was soft and carried the smell of wildflowers that only grew on this alien world. His boots pressed into the pale blue soil as he looked toward the small camp, where lights flickered like fireflies. He had been living among them for many weeks now, helping rebuild what the great storm had destroyed. The people of this world still watched him with curious eyes, but one of them had started to walk beside him more often than the others. Her name was Lyra. She had soft blue eyes that caught the glow of the evening light and hair that shimmered like silver threads. Aaron had met her the night after the storm, when broken shelters and frightened voices filled the valley. She had been standing in the rain trying to pull heavy panels into place to protect the children. He had stepped in without thinking, lifting one of the panels and holding it steady while she fastened the bolts. That was the first time she looked at him not with fear but with something close to wonder. Days turned into weeks as they worked together. Aaron built walls, repaired roofs, and carried supplies from the wrecked cargo pods. He never rested long. When others grew tired, he smiled and said he was fine. Lyra often watched him from a distance, trying to understand why a man from another world would care so much about theirs. She had learned from her elders that humans were wanderers, always chasing something new, never staying long enough to belong. Yet this one stayed. He shared his food, helped their elders, and spoke gently to the young ones who followed him everywhere. Every night when the sky filled with stars, Aaron would sit outside the shelter he had built and gaze upward. Lyra sometimes found herself watching him from behind the glowing trees. He would whisper softly as if talking to someone who wasn't there. Once, when she was close enough to hear, he spoke about a promise he made long ago: to help where help was needed and to never walk away from those who trusted him. The words stayed in her heart. One morning, when the air was cool and the ground still wet from the night rain, Aaron came to the field carrying a small device that emitted warm light. He knelt near the damaged crops and began to fix the soil modules that controlled the growth cycle. Lyra joined him without a word, kneeling beside him to hand over tools. For a while they worked in silence, their hands brushing now and then. She felt her chest tighten each time. After a long pause, he said quietly, "Your people grow food with light instead of soil." "That's amazing," she looked at him, her voice soft. "And your people grow food on land that breathes." He smiled. Maybe both are right. Maybe both can learn from each other. The simplicity of his words touched her. No human she had met before had spoken like that. When she turned away, she realized her heart was beating faster than usual. That evening, as the sun sank again, a gentle wind swept across the camp. Children laughed nearby, chasing small glowing insects that floated in the air. Aaron sat by the river, repairing a tool that one of them had broken. Lyra walked toward him slowly. The silver light of the moons reflected on the water, and his face looked calm, almost sad. She stopped beside him and said, "You do not rest." He glanced up, smiling. "Resting feels strange when there's still work to do." She sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap. "You have done enough. The colony stands again." Aaron looked toward the repaired shelters. "It's not just about building things. It's about making sure people can smile again." His words made her throat tighten. No one had ever said that before. To her people, rebuilding was duty, not kindness. She looked down, wondering why her chest hurt when he spoke. A few moments later, Aaron whispered, "Back on Earth, I used to fix houses for people who lost theirs. When I saw them smile again, it made everything worth it." She turned her eyes toward him. "Do you miss your home?" He hesitated, watching the light dance on the water. "Sometimes. But this place feels peaceful. Maybe I was meant to come here." Something deep inside her stirred. She wanted to ask him to stay, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she said softly, "You are different from what they say about your kind." He chuckled. "Maybe I just had good teachers." The wind brushed past them, carrying the faint scent of the alien blossoms. For a long time they sat in silence, listening to the quiet hum of the night. Lyra felt safe beside him, even though he was from another world. She didn't know what that meant yet, only that she wanted to hear his voice again tomorrow. When he finally stood to leave, he looked back and said, "I'll see you at sunrise." Lyra watched him walk away, his shadow long under the twin moons. Her hand Aaron was by the damaged power unit, his sleeves rolled up, hands covered in dust. He looked up when she came closer and smiled in that easy way of his. "You're up early," he said. I came to bring food, she replied, placing the basket beside him. You forget to eat when you work. He laughed softly. I guess I do. She watched as he took one piece and nodded. Not bad, he said. Sweet. It's made from sky fruit, she told him. It grows where the soil breathes light. My mother used to say it carries the warmth of the suns. He looked at the fruit and smiled again. Then I'll eat more. Maybe it'll keep me from getting cold out here. The way he said it made her heart stir. She wanted to ask why humans always used humor to hide their feelings, but instead she said quietly, the warmth doesn't only come from food. It comes from people. For a moment he looked at her and the air seemed to stop moving. Then he gave a small nod and went back to work. Lyra turned away quickly, afraid he might see the color rising in her cheeks. Later that day, the sky began to darken again. Storm clouds rolled over the hills, glowing faintly with blue lightning. The elders gathered near the main shelter, worried that another flood might come. Aaron joined them, studying the map of the river channels. If the rain gets worse, he said, we'll need to move the supplies uphill. Lyra watched him from behind the crowd. He spoke calmly, explaining where to build barriers, how to strengthen the bridge, and how to protect the young ones. The elders listened, their suspicion slowly replaced by respect. When he finished, one of them said, You speak as if you have led before. Aaron smiled a little. I've helped rebuild towns back home. The rules of water and wind are the same everywhere. That night, heavy rain began to fall. The wind howled through the valley, shaking the half-fixed towers. Lyra couldn't stay in her shelter. She ran into the storm, calling for Aaron. She found him near the storage building, struggling to tie down the cargo panels before the wind tore them away. Without thinking, she grabbed one side and pulled with him. The rain soaked through her clothes and her hair clung to her face. You shouldn't be here, he shouted over the wind. Neither should you, she shouted back. For a moment they laughed even as the storm raged around them. Together they secured the last panel. Then a sudden crash echoed through the night. One of the support bridges had broken near the river. They both ran toward it. When they reached the bridge, they saw two children trapped on the far side, crying in fear. The rope holding the last plank was snapping loose. Aaron didn't wait. He jumped across the narrow gap, landing hard on the other side. The wood creaked under his weight. Lyra called out for him to be careful, but he ignored it, focusing on the children. He lifted one into his arms and motioned for the other to hold tight. The bridge groaned again as he moved back toward her. The final rope gave way, and for one breath it seemed he would fall with them. But he pushed the children forward, using his own weight to throw them to safety. Lyra caught them and pulled them close. Then she reached out for him. Her fingers caught his arm, and with all her strength, she helped pull him back just as the bridge collapsed into the rushing river below. They fell together onto the wet ground, breathing hard. Rain splashed across their faces. She looked at him, trembling. You could have died, she whispered. He smiled weakly. So could they. Family looks out for each other. The word echoed in her mind, family. It was a word her people used rarely, reserved only for those bound by life and soul. Yet this human spoke it as if it were something simple, something real. She stared at him, feeling the weight of what he had just done. He risked everything for children that were not even his own. When the storm finally passed, the valley was quiet again. The children slept safely inside the shelter, and Aaron sat by the fire, his arm bandaged from a deep cut. Lyra sat beside him, unable to look away from his face. His eyes were tired but still bright with that strange, calm strength she had come to know. You always help others first, she said softly. He looked at her, then at the fire. That's what keeps me alive. Helping reminds me who I am. Who are you? She asked before she could stop herself. He smiled. Someone trying to make things better. She nodded slowly, feeling a warmth rise in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. She wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. Instead, she placed her hand gently on his arm. His muscles tensed for a second, then relaxed. He didn't move away. For a long time, they sat in silence, listening to the rain fade into distant drops. The storm had taken part of the bridge, but it had also built something new between them. Something fragile. Something alive. When the fire grew low, she stood to leave. But before stepping away, she whispered, You have given much to my people, Aaron. I hope you find what you're searching for. He looked up at her with a faint smile. Maybe I already have. Her heart trembled again, and she walked into the night before hates. He stirred slightly, opening his eyes. "Hey," he said softly, his voice still rough from sleep. "You should not move yet," she said, lowering her hand quickly. "Your arm needs rest," he smiled. "I've had worse," she frowned. "You say that too often?" He laughed weakly. "Probably because it's true." Lyra sighed and handed him the bowl. "Eat," she said. "Your strength will not return by words alone." He took the fruit and nodded. "You sound like my grandmother," he said. She tilted her head. "Is that a compliment?" "It's the best one," he said with a smile that made her heart feel unsteady again. Later, when the suns rose higher, the children came to thank him. They brought small glowing flowers and placed them beside him. One of them hugged his leg shyly. Aaron smiled and told them to stay brave, to help rebuild again. The way he spoke made the children's eyes shine with hope. Lyra stood nearby, watching. Her people had always been careful with emotion, but this man gave it freely. He spoke as if love and kindness were things to share, not hide. It was strange yet beautiful. As the day passed, Aaron began helping again despite his injury. Lyra followed, scolding him quietly. "You are not made of iron," she said. He grinned. Close enough. When the others saw them together, they began to whisper softly. Some smiled, but others frowned. The elders watched with cautious eyes. They feared what might come from such closeness between different worlds. Lyra could feel their judgment, but she no longer cared. Every time she looked at Aaron, the noise around her faded away. That evening, as the suns dipped low, she found him sitting on a broken wall near the edge of the camp. The sky was painted in gold and violet. He held the moonstone pendant she had given him days ago. It glowed faintly in the fading light. "You still wear it?" she said, sitting beside him. "Of course," he replied. "It reminds me I'm not alone." Her chest tightened. "Do humans feel alone often?" He looked up at the twin moons. "Sometimes, even when surrounded by people. But being here feels different." "It feels unreal," she nodded slowly. "You speak of belonging," he turned to her. "Yeah, do you ever feel that way?" She hesitated. "Not until recently." The silence that followed was soft and warm. The wind moved through the tall grass, and somewhere far away a creature called out to the night. Aaron leaned back on his hands, watching the sky. "When I was a boy," he said, "I thought stars were tiny holes in the sky where light from another world leaked through. Maybe one of those lights was your world." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then perhaps we have always seen each other without knowing." He looked at her, surprised by her words, then smiled. "Maybe we did." Their eyes met, and for a long moment neither spoke. The world seemed to pause. She felt her heartbeat rise and her hands trembled. She looked away, pretending to fix the cloth on her arm. That night she couldn't sleep. She walked outside, drawn by the quiet hum of the river. The air was cool and full of mist. She found Aaron there, sitting on a rock, watching the moonlight on the water. "You cannot rest either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Too much on my mind." She stood beside him, looking at the reflection of the stars. "You think of your home?" "Sometimes," he said. "But mostly I think about this place. About the people. About you." The last word hung between them. Lyra's breath caught. She turned toward him, her heart beating fast. "Why me?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because when I first came here I felt lost. I thought I was just another stranger fixing broken things. But you made me feel like I belong." Her eyes shimmered in the light of the moons. "I only helped you with small tasks," she said softly. "You did more than that," he replied. "You stayed." She didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight. The night around them seemed alive. The stars burning brighter, the river whispering quietly. For the first time she reached out and placed her hand on his. His fingers closed gently around hers. She felt warmth spread through her entire body, a warmth that had nothing to do with the air. They stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, not moving. Two souls from different worlds sitting side by side under the same sky. When she finally pulled her hand away, he whispered, "Lyra." She looked at him and he smiled faintly. "Thank you." She wanted to ask for what, but something in his eyes told her he meant everything. Every word, every moment, every quiet breath they shared. When she returned to her shelter, her heart was still trembling. She pressed her hand to her chest and whispered his name into the dark. It was a sound she had never spoken so softly before, and it filled her world with warmth. The suns rose over the valley again. turning the mist into gold. The world felt calm after many days of storms and hard work. The people of the colony moved with lighter steps now. Crops began to grow again, and the sound of laughter returned to the camp. Yet Lyra's thoughts were not peaceful. Every time she saw Aaron walking through the fields, something inside her changed. She didn't understand the feeling, only that it made her heart beat faster and her words stumble. Aaron was busy repairing the power relays when she approached. He was covered in dust, his sleeves rolled up, his eyes focused. She stood for a moment, watching the way the light caught his hair and how steady his hands were. When he noticed her, he smiled in that warm way that always disarmed her. "You came to check if I'm working right?" he asked playfully. She shook her head, trying to hide her nervousness. "I brought you water. You forget to drink." He took the bottle and nodded. "You always take care of everyone, Lyra." "I only do what must be done," she replied softly. He smiled again. "That's what makes you special." The words stayed in her mind long after she walked away. She had heard praise before, but never like this. When he said it, it felt real, like the world itself had stopped for a moment just to let her hear it. That evening, the villagers gathered to celebrate the renewal of their home. Lanterns made of glowing stones hung from trees, and soft music filled the air. Children danced and elders shared stories. Lyra wore a simple white garment, and her silver hair shimmered under the twin moons. Aaron stood near the fire, surrounded by people thanking him. When their eyes met across the crowd, something unspoken passed between them. She walked over slowly, and when she reached him, he extended a hand. "Dance with me?" he asked. She hesitated. "I don't know how humans dance." "Then we'll learn together," he said. He placed his hand gently on her back and guided her. The music was slow, and though her steps were uncertain, he matched her movements with ease. Around them, laughter and light filled the night. But for Lyra, the world had narrowed to only one thing: the sound of his heartbeat close to hers. When the song ended, she stepped back, her cheeks warm. "You move like water," he said. "And you move like wind," she replied quietly. They smiled, but the air between them grew thick with something neither could name. For a moment they just stood there, the firelight flickering between them. Then one of the elders called Aaron over to speak about future plans. He gave her a small nod and walked away, but she felt the absence of his presence like a weight. Later, after the celebration, Lyra walked alone to the edge of the forest. The lights of the camp glowed behind her, but the trees ahead shimmered with faint silver light. She heard soft footsteps behind her and turned. Aaron was there, holding a small wooden box. "I wanted to give you something," he said. She looked at him curiously. "You already gave us your time, your strength." "You owe nothing." He opened the box. Inside lay a small metal charm, shaped like a circle joined with a star. "It's something from Earth," he explained. "People there give this to someone they trust. It means they share the same sky." Lyra looked at the charm, her fingers trembling slightly. "You give this to me?" He nodded. "You've given me something too, a reason to stay." Her breath caught. "Stay?" He smiled. "The next ship leaves in a few days, but I don't want to leave." Lyra's heart began to race. "You would give up your home?" He looked up at the stars. "Maybe home isn't just a place. Maybe it's a person." She couldn't answer. Words felt too heavy. She closed the box and held it close to her chest. "Your people may not understand." "Maybe not," he said softly. "But I understand what I feel when I'm with you." She turned her eyes toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "And what is that feeling?" He took a slow breath. "Peace, belonging, hope." Her eyes shimmered under the moonlight. "Humans use words so easily," she said. "But for my kind, we only speak of feelings when they mean everything." He took a small step closer. "Then tell me what this means to you, Lyra." She hesitated, looking down. "It means I am afraid. Because when you leave, my heart will not know how to be still again." Aaron stood silent for a long time, then reached out and took her hands. "What if I don't leave?" Her eyes widened. "You would stay for me?" He nodded. "I would stay because this is where I want to be. With you." Her hands trembled in his. She could not speak. The stars above seemed to blur as tears filled her eyes. For a long time they stood there, two different beings under one sky, both understanding something without saying it aloud. Finally he whispered, "I don't know what the future will bring, but I know I want to build something here, a home, maybe even a family. Her heart stopped for a moment. The word family was sacred to her people. It meant more than blood, huh? It meant souls bound together. Her throat tightened. Family, she repeated softly. He smiled gently. Only if you want that too. Lyra could not answer, not yet. But she stepped forward and rested her head against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, warm, alive. She closed her eyes and listened. For the first time in her life, the sound of another being's heart made her feel safe. The wind moved through the glowing trees and the stars seemed to hum above them. The human and the alien stood together in silence, and in that silence, something beautiful began to grow, a promise that neither of them would ever forget. The following days felt different. Filled with a quiet tension neither of them could escape. The news that a ship from Earth had arrived spread quickly through the colony. Some of the humans were preparing to leave, their work finished, ready to return to their world. Aaron was one of them, at least according to the records. Yet his heart had already chosen another place to belong. Lyra tried to act as if everything was normal, but her thoughts followed him like a shadow. She found herself walking to the river often, standing where they had once spoken beneath the twin moons. The air was cooler now and the trees had started to shed their glowing petals into the wind. Each petal floated like a piece of light, reminding her of the time they spent together. She held the small charm he had given her and pressed it against her chest. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear his voice. Home isn't just a place, it's a person. The words played in her mind over and over. They frightened her because she didn't want to believe them. Yet deep inside, she already did. That evening, the ship's captain visited the colony. The crew was ready to depart the next morning. Aaron was expected to board with them. Lyra stayed hidden behind one of the large energy towers as she listened. "You've done well, Aaron," the captain said. "Your work here has been recorded. You'll be needed back on Earth soon. The new missions require experienced builders." Aaron nodded slowly, but his expression was unreadable. "I understand, sir." "Good." We lift off at dawn. When the captain left, Aaron stood still for a long time, staring up at the sky. The stars were already bright. He thought of the children laughing in the village, of the way the trees glowed when Lyra sang to them at night, and of her eyes when she looked at him, full of something he couldn't name but could never forget. Later, Lyra found him sitting by the old wall near the forest edge. The silver grass swayed gently in the night wind. She could see from his face that he had made no decision yet. Her heart pounded as she walked toward him. "You are leaving," she said quietly. He didn't look up right away. "The ship leaves tomorrow. And will you go?" He turned toward her then, his eyes full of emotion. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Part of me wants to go back. But part of me feels like I already found what I was looking for here." She looked down at her hands. "I do not wish to see you go." He stood and took a slow step toward her. "Lyra," he said softly, "I never planned for this to happen. I came here to fix buildings, not hearts." Her voice trembled. "Then why did you give me the charm? Why did you speak of home and family?" He reached out, his fingers brushing her hair. "Because I meant every word." She closed her eyes, her heart shaking inside her chest. "You are human. Your kind travels the stars. My kind stays on the ground. We are not the same." He smiled gently. "Maybe that's why we fit together. You keep me grounded and I make you dream." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the wind filled the silence. Then Aaron said quietly, "Come with me. There's space for you on the ship." Her eyes widened. "Leave my world?" "Yes," he said. "See mine. Learn what it's like beyond the stars. Then decide where you want to stay." She shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "My roots are here. This land knows my name. I cannot leave it, but you should go." Aaron looked at her for a long time. "And if I don't?" "You would lose your place among your people," she whispered. "They would not understand." He stepped closer, placing his hand on her cheek. "I already lost my place the moment I met you, and I don't regret it." Her tears finally fell. "You speak like this, and my heart cannot stop trembling." "Then let it tremble," he said softly. "That's how you know it's alive." The words broke through her fear. She threw her arms around him, holding him tightly as if the stars themselves might take him away. He held her just as firmly, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. For a long time, neither moved. The night seemed endless, filled with the quiet sound of two beings who had finally found something worth holding on to. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "If you stay, your life will change forever." He nodded. "I know. but it will be my choice. As dawn approached, the ship's engines roared in the distance, a deep, steady sound that echoed through the valley. Lyra stood by the river, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She didn't go to the launch site. She couldn't bear to watch. She closed her eyes and whispered a small prayer to the stars, hoping he would be safe wherever he went. Then she heard footsteps behind her, slow, steady, familiar. She turned. Aaron stood there, his uniform jacket gone, his travel pack lying in the grass. The light of the rising suns touched his face. "I told them I'm not leaving," he said simply. Her breath caught. "You stayed?" He nodded. "I don't need to search anymore. I found where I belong." She felt her knees weaken as tears filled her eyes. "You would give up your world for me?" He smiled softly. "You are my world now." She couldn't stop herself. She ran to him and he caught her in his arms. The wind rose around them, carrying petals through the air. The ship's engines faded into the distance, leaving only silence and the warmth of two hearts that had finally chosen the same path. As the suns climbed higher, the valley filled with golden light. For the first time in her life, Lyra wasn't afraid of tomorrow, because now she would not face it alone. The days after the ship left were quiet. The valley seemed softer now, touched by peace. The wind no longer carried the sound of engines, only the whisper of the river and the call of strange birds that sang at sunrise. Aaron had chosen to stay, and with that choice, everything around him began to feel new. He was no longer just a visitor. He was part of something living, something that breathed with him. Lyra helped him build a small home at the edge of the glowing forest. It was made of smooth stone and wood from the fallen trees. The walls reflected the colors of the twin moons at night, and during the day, sunlight poured through the wide windows. She taught him how to use the crystal energy cores that powered light and warmth, and he showed her how to build stronger roofs from human alloy. Together, they blended their two worlds into one. Every morning, Aaron woke to the sound of her voice outside, soft and rhythmic as she sang to the crops that shimmered blue under the suns. Her songs made the soil breathe with energy, helping plants grow faster. He never understood how it worked, but he loved to watch her do it. She would close her eyes, lift her hands toward the light, and the air would hum around her. One day he brought her something from his old kit, a small gardening tool made of polished metal. "On Earth," he said, "we use this for planting." She held it carefully, her fingers tracing its shape. "So small," she said, "yet it holds life." He smiled. "Like you?" She looked up, startled, and then laughed softly. "Humans use words in strange ways." "Maybe," he said, "but I mean every one of them." Their laughter echoed through the field, mixing with the sound of the wind. As time passed, they built more than a home. They built a life. The people of the colony came often, asking Aaron for help with machines and asking Lyra to bless the soil. Together they became a symbol of unity, proof that two different beings could live in harmony. Some still whispered, unsure if such a bond should exist, but most saw hope in them. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Aaron and Lyra sat outside their home. The sky turned red and gold, and the air was warm. Lyra leaned against the wooden railing, watching the river below. Aaron was beside her, holding a small piece of paper. "What is that?" she asked. "A letter," he said. "I used to write them on Earth. It's how people told each other their hearts." She tilted her head. "You write feelings?" He nodded. "When words are too hard to say out loud?" She smiled faintly. "Then maybe I should learn to write." He handed her the paper. "You already write," he said. "You write in my life every day." Her heart trembled again. It was the same feeling that had haunted her since the first time he smiled at her by the river. Only now it no longer frightened her. It felt right. She placed her hand on his, her fingers soft against his skin. "I used to think love was a story for others," she said quietly, "something that only belonged in songs. But now I know it can be real." Aaron turned his hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "It is real. Because you make it that way." The stars began to appear one by one, lighting the darkening sky. The forest glowed faintly, alive with night creatures that moved like sparks in the air. It was their world now, a blend of Earth's strength and her people's light. Over the next months, they worked to make the valley thrive again. Aaron built irrigation lines while Lyra taught the children how to heal plants with their voices. He fixed broken drones, and she carved new symbols of protection into the village gates. Wherever they went, laughter followed. People began to call the place Harmony Vale, But even in peace, life had its moments of struggle. Some days the machines failed, or the crops withered in strange weather. During those times, Aaron and Lyra argued. He wanted logic. She believed in spirit. Yet every argument ended the same way, with them sitting quietly beside the fire, realizing that neither could exist without the other. One night, a great storm returned to the valley. Lightning flashed across the sky and heavy rain poured down. Their home shook under the wind. Aaron rushed to secure the tools outside while Lyra tried to keep the power cores stable. When he came back inside, soaked to the bone, she wrapped a glowing blanket around him. "You never learn," she said with a smile. He laughed softly. "Maybe I like giving you reasons to worry." "Then you succeed every day." He took her hands, still shivering from the cold, and pulled her close. "You're my warmth," he whispered. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside their small home, everything was calm. The sound of the wind became a lullaby, and the flicker of the fire danced on their faces. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat, strong and steady, the rhythm that had once saved her people. When morning came, the storm was gone. The world sparkled under sunlight, clean and alive. Lyra stepped outside and breathed deeply. Aaron joined her, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. "It's strange," she said softly. "Each time the world breaks, it comes back stronger." He nodded. "Maybe that's how love works too." She looked up at him and smiled. "Then we are stronger now." "Yes," he said. "We are." They stood together, watching the valley glow in the morning light. For the first time in his life, Aaron felt he had truly built something lasting. Not just walls or homes, but a life bound by trust and love. And as for Lyra, she finally understood what her elders had once told her, that the heart knows its home not by blood, but by the soul that chooses to stay. The years passed slowly and gently in the valley. The land that had once been broken now bloomed with life. Trees with glowing leaves stretched tall over the hills. Rivers sang softly through the plains, and laughter often echoed between the homes. It had become a place where both humans and Lyra's people lived together, working side by side. The world that once feared difference now grew strong because of it. Aaron had changed too. His hair had grown a little longer and faint lines had appeared around his eyes, but the warmth in them had never faded. Each morning he still rose before the suns to start the day's work. Lyra would already be outside, humming a tune that called the light over the valley. The sound of her voice still made his heart feel the same way it did years ago, when he first heard her singing to the broken soil. They now lived in a home that stood where their first shelter once had been. It was larger now, surrounded by glowing vines that curled up the walls. Inside, soft light from crystal lamps filled the rooms. On the porch, small footprints were pressed into the dust. A child's laughter came from the garden. Aaron looked out through the window, smiling. Their son was chasing glowing insects among the flowers. His hair dark like his father's, but his skin faintly shimmering like his mother's. He moved with the energy of both worlds. Strong, curious, and full of wonder. "Careful," Lyra called gently. "The river's edge is slippery." The boy turned, laughing. "I know, Mama." Aaron stepped outside, brushing his hands on his shirt. "He's growing fast," he said. Lyra smiled at him. "Faster than I expected. He learns from watching you." "Then he'll be stubborn," Aaron said with a grin. She laughed softly and leaned against him. "And kind. Because of you." They stood together, watching the boy run through the sunlight. It was a moment of quiet joy, one of those small pieces of life that made everything worth it. Later that evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, the valley glowed with golden light. Families gathered near the river for the Festival of Renewal, a tradition that had started years ago to celebrate the peace between their races. Lanterns floated above the water, and the smell of roasted fruit and baked roots filled the air. Music drifted from one end of the valley to the other. Aaron and Lyra walked hand in hand among the crowd. Their son held onto Lyra's dress, his eyes wide with excitement. People greeted them warmly. To everyone in the colony, Aaron and Lyra were not just a couple. They were a story, a living proof that two worlds could love and survive together. As night fell, they sat by the fire, surrounded by laughter and song. The boy climbed into Aaron's lap, resting his head against his chest. "Papa," he said sleepily, "is it true you came from the sky?" Aaron smiled, glancing at Lyra. "It's true," he said softly. "I came from far away." The child looked up at the stars, his eyes shining. Then why didn't you go back? Aaron looked at the glowing sky for a long moment before answering. Because I found something here that was worth staying for. What's that? The boy asked. Aaron smiled. Love and family. Lyra's heart tightened at his words. She reached out, brushing her fingers through their son's hair. Your father chose this world because he believed in it, she said. Because he believed in us. The boy blinked sleepily. Then I'll believe in it too. Aaron chuckled softly and kissed the top of his son's head. That's all I could ever ask for. As the night grew deeper, the three of them sat together watching the lanterns float across the river. The lights reflected in their eyes like 1,000 tiny suns. The sound of gentle water mixed with quiet voices and the hum of music. It was peaceful, a kind of peace that could only come from years of shared struggle and love. When the festival ended, they walked back to their home under a sky full of stars. The path was lined with glowing plants that pulsed softly as they passed. The boy had fallen asleep in Aaron's arms. Lyra walked beside them, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Inside their home, Aaron placed the child gently on his bed. The boy murmured something in his sleep, a mix of human words and Lyra's native tongue. Lyra smiled.
He speaks both now without thinking, she said. Aaron nodded.
He belongs to both worlds. They stepped outside again, standing on the porch. The night was calm. The twin moons shone brightly, bathing everything in silver light. Lyra looked up at the sky. Do you ever miss Earth? She asked quietly. Aaron thought for a moment. Sometimes, he said. But then I remember what I would have missed if I hadn't stayed. She turned to him, her eyes soft. You kept your promise, she said. He smiled faintly. Which one? The one you made long ago, when you said you wanted to build a family with me. He reached out and took her hand. It wasn't just words, Lyra, it was the truth. Her fingers tightened around his. And now it is our life. The wind moved through the valley, carrying the scent of flowers and distant rain. Somewhere beyond the hills, a new dawn waited to rise. Aaron looked at Lyra and felt the same wonder he had felt the first time he saw her standing beneath the stormy sky years ago. I used to think building something meant walls and roofs, he said softly. But you showed me it means hearts and trust. Lyra leaned closer, her head resting against his shoulder. And you showed me that love can cross stars. They stood there for a long time, watching the sky slowly turn from silver to blue as the first light of morning touched the valley. Behind them, their child slept safely. Around them, life bloomed in harmony. The human had once said he wanted to build a family. The alien woman's heart had trembled when she first heard those words. Now, years later, as she looked at him beneath the endless sky, her heart trembled again, not with fear but with joy. And in that quiet moment, under the light of 2 moons and the promise of a new day, she knew that their love had become more than a story. It had become the bond that held 2 worlds together, forever.